Well, hello, grievers. Mandy here. Restorative grief is all about creating easy access to healing, no matter where or who you are. That's why I want you to remember that if you want grief support beyond a podcast, our Patreon features monthly workbooks to accompany each episode, as well as a Discord channel for more private chats and occasional bonus content as well. Supporting this work with your finances means investing in your own wellness and the healing of others, and that in itself is an incredibly generous and restorative practice. The link to the Patreon is in the show notes, but reach out with questions, okay? Now, let's get on to this week's episode. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 165, titled Our Individual Griefs with Theo Boyd. When we grieve, we move between feeling like no one will ever understand us to realizing everyone thinks they already understand us. When Theo Boyd realized she was hearing everyone else's grief stories, but no one had capacity to listen to her own, she began to write her story down. Now, Theo is the author of My Grief Is Not Like Yours, a deeply personal memoir about navigating the complexities of loss, grief, and healing after the tragic deaths of her mother and her father, among other losses. Through candid storytelling, Boyd unpacks the unique layers of grief while offering her readers permission to honor their own experience, no matter how different or misunderstood it may feel. So today we're diving into her journey, her insights on grief, and the powerful lessons she's learned about healing along the way. Hey everyone, welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I am so honored to bring you my guest today. She and I have been trying to connect for a few years, and that's just the nature of being an author and a speaker and someone who's working in the grief world. We're constantly busy because there's so much care and intention needed in this work. So my guest today is the author of My Grief Is Not Like Yours. It's a deeply personal memoir about her own story of loss and the way that she is unpacking all those layers of grief. So without another moment, years in the waiting, Theo Boyd, thank you for being with me today.
Thank you, Mandy. Finally,
I know.
gosh. If the people out there knew all the rescheduling and scheduling and then all the mess, but hey, we're here today.
We are doing it, and we are better for it because when we first started to talk, your idea about your book was coming around, and now it's been in the world for a few years. And this book, My Grief Is Not Like Yours, is a beautiful memoir and journey of storytelling that really honestly challenges that notion that we have that everyone experiences grief, which is true. But there was a pivotal moment in your own experience where you realized our losses are as unique as our fingerprints. What was that moment for you?
That's beautiful the way that you said that.
Mm.
And, it was early on. My mom died July 29th, 2019. And that was the horrific tractor accident in which my father was on the tractor that ran over her.
Mm.
And I was a high school English teacher teaching creative writing and English. And I started journaling because I felt very unheard in my grief early on. And well-intentioned friends and family would come over to the house, and we all know about those well-intentioned friends and family and their advice and their comparison. And I felt like nobody was really thinking about my mom. It's like, I can't hear about how you lost your mom if your mom wasn't run over by a tractor that your father was driving. I mean, that's how I felt. And I thought, if I'm feeling this way, there has to be millions of other grievers out there feeling this way. And it was a very frustrated feeling. So, what I told my students at that time is, if you're feeling unheard, you need to write it down. So, I started practicing what I was preaching to my kids in the classroom,
Wow.
and I started writing it down. And I just remembered those words: my grief is not like yours, playing over and over in my head when people would be talking to me. And the most memorable moments for me early on in my grief are the moments that somebody would just be with me. They don't have to say any big thing, they don't have to do any big thing. Just be with me and be present with me.
Mm.
And that's the message I'm trying to get out to everybody is yes, my grief is not like yours. It's time that we just be present with grievers, allow them to grieve and not offer a comparison which really pushes that griever or the fresh griever further down in their darkness.
Yeah. I think centering really squashes any empathy we want to offer to someone when we show up and put ourselves in the middle of the conversation in a genuine and beautiful effort to relate and say, I get it. I know what you're going through. My pushback has always been similar to yours. No, you don't, because you didn't ask. You made some guesses, and you're probably not that far off if we're being honest. But the reality is, you didn't ask. You just assumed, and it hurts because what do we need the most when we're in pain? To be heard, to know that someone sees us and is willing to sit with us through that intensity. So I love that your response was to say, "No, I have good advice embedded in my head. I give it to others. I can do this myself and put this to paper." How did that shift things for you as you started writing things down, in relationship to people who would show up and start to recount their stories trying to help you heal?
I started to pull away. I would leave the room. I would, and I'm sure there's other people out there listening that have done this.
Mhm.
Somebody's talking to you, and rather than say something that they may find rude, because I asked my counselor at that time, I was running everything by her, which I share a lot of Gail. Her name was Gail. I share a lot of Gailisms in my book because she just loaded me with an arsenal of tools for my grief. And she would say, now we don't, I would say to her, is it okay if I just tell people that if their dad didn't run over their mom with a tractor, I can't talk to them? And she said, well, that's probably not the best response. And this was early on in my grief. I'm not that type of person that was just upset all the time. But early on in my grief, I was because anger feels better than sadness, right? So I was angry at a lot of things, but I would hold it all in and I would just journal it on the page and get it out that way. But every time that somebody would come to me, rather than do what now I tell people to do, which is just to say, I'm sorry, I really can't talk about this right now. Can
Mhm.
you please excuse me? Just go take a moment. They should understand if you just can't talk about it at that moment and just kind of excuse yourself and go in another room and do some deep breathing exercises. I've been doing yoga. It has changed my life.
Mm.
I've been doing just a YouTube yoga every single day, even if it's only a 10-minute one. Some days I have time for a longer one, but just giving myself that gift of time to myself. And that's one of the huge wise things that Gail shared with me. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. And I think so much of this that I had some coffee mugs made with that on there and t-shirts because I didn't know what she meant early on. I was like, what does she mean? Go get a massage? Go have a spa day? What is she talking about? But I realized she's talking about filling my cup before I can fill others, putting the mask on me before I can put the oxygen on everyone else. And I wasn't doing that. I was trying to take care of my dad, take care of everybody else. We're so hard on ourselves. So, what I like to say now is give yourself grace in grief.
Mm. Yeah. You said something so fascinating in there. Anger is better to feel than sadness. And I think that's such a powerful statement because no one would admit that, right? We wouldn't say, actually, I feel great when I'm angry. Anger is a safer emotion than sadness. It's so protective and it's so insulating because when we're angry, people stay away, they keep their distance. They're not as quick to offer advice other than calm down, which of course fuels the flames of rage, and then you can keep them even further away. I think that sorrow, it becomes it's so tender. And if you're not treating yourself tenderly, like you said, if you're not moving your body in small, generous ways, if you're not attending to that soft part of you that deserves care, like a little kitten, you wouldn't just pick it up aggressively, you would pick it up gently, then it's really hard to let anyone else even see that sorrow and that sadness too.
I was sorrowing in my writing. I was being this sad, sorrowful gentle person in my writing because I was writing the beautiful love story of my parents, how they met, their life, how it was growing up on the farm, their tragic deaths. I walk the reader through every inch of what I experienced, both with my mom's accident, with my divorce and the infidelity, and then with my dad's suicide. I walk them through everything I witnessed. But in my writing, I would be sitting there typing and I would look down and my hands would be wet. And I'm like, what is happening? And I was crying while I was writing and not even realizing it.
Wow.
So my sorrow was coming out in writing. So then when I wasn't writing, my anger would come out. And, and probably exactly what you said. That makes such perfect sense. I was showing the anger so that people would stay away so I could get my sorrow out on the page. And once I did that, I realized how big a chunk of healing that was to
Yeah.
write it and get it out. So I tell grievers all the time, get your grief out, whatever outlet that is, fishing, running, walking, swimming, baking, cooking, sewing, writing, get it out of here and onto something else.
Yeah, grief needs a witness and an expression, and even if we are our own witness to begin with, that allows us to find a way to express it. And I love that you name activities like fishing and baking as grief expressions because they are. There's this wonderful novel, I read it in high school. You may know it, like Water for Chocolate. It's this magical realism story, and I tell people about it all the time. The main character is going through sorrow and transformation. And at one point early in the story, she weeps into the food that she is preparing. And as everyone takes food to their plates, they begin weeping this incredible heaviness and sorrow with her. And she doesn't connect the dots. And of course, the story is much more than just that, but it is an incredible way of demonstrating, like, yes, the way that we emote, we think we're holding it in. She thinks she's doing fine and hiding it and keeping her emotions to herself. But her wise grandmother, the guide in the book, of course, is like, girl, it's coming out of you. This needs to be said. There's a reason these things are happening because you have to express yourself and be honest. And it's powerful when we think about how that affects other people. So you mentioned your sister and of course your father's death. How has your story put on paper begun to affect and impact the people in your life and the family around you?
I think they realize how passionate I am about what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
And I think some of them are shocked, and I will quote what I've heard. How do you stay in that?
Mm,
How do you stay in that? And I'm like, in grief? Well, it will always be with me. I call it our counterpart in my book. It's the
mm,
new counterpart that we live with. And I even have an image of what grief looks like in one of my chapters called The Ring. And it's not about, most people would think the book's about the ring, like, oh, I bet it's their wedding ring when they got married. No, the ring is a boxing ring. And I talk about this figure, this black silhouette, dark shadow that I would wake up to that was like Rocky Balboa and Sylvester, it was Sylvester Stallone and Mike Tyson all in one. And it would punch me in the gut every morning when I'd wake up.
mm,
And so the boxer is always there. He's always there to punch me in the gut. You can be walking down the aisle of the grocery store and there's a punch to the gut. You
mm.
never know when that counterpart's going to punch you. But I've learned to punch back, and I've learned to stand up and be able to live with that counterpart in a productive and successful way.
Yeah.
Early on in my grief, I never dreamed I'd be able to do this, but it is because of my foundation. It's those F words that I talk about in my book: fellowship, friends, fun, food, foundation, that I'm able to go out and help others by writing what most people can't write to the page because it's so raw, and by speaking it. I know there's people out there experiencing horrible loss and loneliness, but they're not able to talk about it or put it on the page like I can. And that's because of the foundation I had as a child. I had such a strong mom and dad that my dad was a minister in our community for 33 years. So I watched him go out and help people. So
Mm.
it's innate. It's just in my DNA to go out and help people in their time of need. And early on in my grief, after my mom died, my dad, I realized, was not going to be there for me. He cannot comfort me. And that was a big aha moment for me. Like, what? I thought my dad would be over here consoling me. I've lost my mom. But he had such heavy weight and guilt that he didn't have it in him to console anybody. He couldn't even console himself. So, the night of my mom's accident, I heard him saying horrible things. This minister, my dad, and I'm this 47-year-old daughter hearing him say these words I've never heard him utter in his life. And it frightened me. And I contacted my counselor that night, and she said, let him say the words that he needs to say. Those are the words that carry the weight of his pain. And it dawned on me right then, wow, I've never heard this. I'm 47 years old. I'm an educator of high school students, but I've never heard that. So my goal and mission in life now is to spread that word that, hey, I'm not saying go into a room full of kindergartners and start cussing, but if you're grieving and someone that's grieving and from a traumatic loss or a complicated grief situation, let them say the words they need to say and let them get that out. I think as a society, we shy away from that. Like, oh, you're still grieving. Oh, you're still sad. And I want to just say, I hate that, Mandy. I
Yeah,
want to
I
change
mean,
that.
it's one of the most infuriating experiences I have is meeting clients and friends and even family members who say, no one's ever let me just talk. No one has ever been able to tolerate the discomfort, right? They're not saying it that way, but I know they're expressing everyone around me is terrified to catch my grief. Everyone around me is scared that they will feel so sad and not know how to handle themselves. They are not equipped to navigate loss. And so now that I'm faced with them and I used to be a source of fun, they don't know what to do with me, right? You said something there about boxing, punching back. And as I'm listening to you talk about how punching back to me sounds a lot like making space for people and making space for yourself. I'm curious if that's accurate or if there's something else. Like how might one who relates to that idea of this boxer punching them in the gut at random times begin to say, what does punching back mean for me?
Yeah, you've got to find that. And that's a lot of what my second book is going to deal with. And that's our commitment to healing. The one word that my second book, the one word that describes it is strength. And it takes a daily, not just grind, it takes grit. The mother of a 20-year-old boy that got killed here about a year ago, he was actually renting the pasture on our farm and the cattle. He had bought cattle and he was just this young, vibrant, beautiful 20-year-old boy, just started college. He got killed in an accident, and his mom and our friend, she's in this town that I live in, and she told me one day, and I thought, that is genius. She looked at me and she said, it's not grind, it's grit every day to just get up. And it's that daily commitment to healing to avoid the relapse. So to me, relapse is when that boxer gets back in the ring with you and punches you in the gut. You're on the edge of relapse. And that can be, I hate this word now, but triggered, your triggers, your things that cause you to relapse in your grief. And it can be watching a friend of yours go through a loss. And maybe that loss wasn't as traumatic for them as yours was. So you start to feel jealousy about that. And my mom always said, jealousy is the worst emotion, but it can trigger you to get angry about how your loved one died, or how maybe you didn't get to tell your loved one goodbye. So you get jealous and you have those feelings. That's all part of a little storm that's brewing that can cause a huge relapse in your grief. So it's our daily commitment to healing with our strength to keep getting up. And it looks different for everyone, so it's hard for me to answer that. But for me, it was that daily deciding, you know what? I'm not going to sit here today and just cry. I'm not going to lay in bed. I'm going to get up. I'm going to wash a load of laundry. I'm going to put a chicken in the crock pot. I'm going to do something productive, and I'm going to call a friend. And we all know who those true friends are. Grief separates the children from the adults. And call that friend and say, can I just talk to you for a minute? Or will you just talk to me? Can we go to a movie? Will you come have coffee with me? Don't be afraid to reach out and lean on those friends because that's why God puts them in your life. And I learned early on who my true friends were. And I call them in my book my fairy blonde mothers.
That's adorable, first of all. I really love the idea of grief separates the children from the adults because I think we don't talk often enough about how these secondary losses occur when we have a significant grief event and then we lose friends because of it too, and not because we've done anything wrong, but simply because we've changed and they haven't, or they're not on a similar understanding or available again to sit in that discomfort with us. Losing a friend is immeasurably painful when there's no clear path or answers to why. But if we could even take a step back and give them some grace and permission to just exist where they're at, maybe through that lens of saying they are more childlike, they are more innocent to some degree. They don't have this experience or capacity to show up with me, but it's not an accusation. It's just a circumstance, it's a life experience. And with some people, of course, it is a choice to stay young, naive, innocent. And that's a whole different conversation. But I think it's interesting to consider what would be possible if we framed our relationships with these are the people I truly know have grown and who have, honestly, let's say it, aged because of loss. And what does that mean for us as friends? What does that mean for me as someone they can be that I can rely upon?
Yeah, and Gail, the Gailism from my counselor Gail is where that came from. Grief separates the children from the adults.
Yeah.
She said that to me when I went in her office and told her that I found out my husband had been having an affair during my grief.
Yeah.
And that a divorce is, the person you thought you could count on the most is actually the person you could count on the least. And
Yeah.
that betrayal, that's just another part of the heart that breaks and shatters. You thought you had one common, like one foundation, and it's gone. So all of a sudden you're just standing on broken glass, and it's just it's so hard. But she looked at me, and we kind of chuckled a little bit. And she said, grief separates the children from the adults. And it made me feel good to think, well, he's a child. Now I'm grown up. He didn't want to deal with grief. He escaped it. He didn't even want to help me deal with my grief. He escaped it.
Yeah.
So it's just it's just another loss, another huge loss that in the
Yeah.
book that I didn't talk a lot about in the book. But nobody wants to read about a woman scorned. Um, Everybody grieves in their own way, hence the title. So I just kind of left it alone, but it was very, very shattering to me.
Yeah. Well, and I too want to just acknowledge I don't think anybody escapes grief. I think think we do. I think we feel unscathed and insulated, but our bodies remember. It's why 10 minutes of yoga, even gentle yin yoga or restorative, can be so significant. Your body is releasing what's pent up. I've been noticing it in myself all morning, and I've got so many calls today. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do in between each call is stretch. I have nothing better to do but honor what I'm carrying today. And I think that that's huge, right? Um, yeah. I want to ask you questions about your second book, but before we do, I also want to honor your relationship with your father because I know that that was such a powerful loss to experience on the tail end of losing your mom and your marriage. So let's give some voice to your dad for a moment.
Yeah, Daddy. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to throw in my counselor, Gail, died suddenly.
Oh
I
my
don't know
goodness,
I don't know if I got to tell you that.
you didn't.
Gail died, so she's another grief in the book. And I sent the book to her husband after she had passed, and he was just so touched. And
Wow.
I said, I really could write a book just on Gailisms, and he
Yeah.
laughed.
Hmm.
But yeah, my dad had found a confidant in his grief with Gail, so I had to yet go to him and tell him about another loss of a strong female in his life. But my dad, he was the 6'4" charismatic individual. He was the Charles Ingalls of our county. When he showed up, everybody would say, "Whoo, Joe Bob's here. Now we know what to do." They would follow him. They would do what he did. He preached and did so many ceremonies and funerals and weddings all through the years for so many people. And I told a lot of my friends early on after mama's accident that they asked how my dad's doing because I took family leave from high school and I was with him for about 8 weeks. And that was at the end of 2019. And then we moved, my ex-husband and I moved to Whitney to be closer to daddy. And that's when my marriage began falling apart. But I went to check on daddy that Father's Day morning, 2022, and surprise him with breakfast. And I found he'd taken his life with a firearm.
Mm.
And, early on, we'd removed all the guns from the house. And because he didn't give us signs that he was going to do that, he told us. I mean, he flat out said, I want to take my life. I want to be with Sue. He said, the only reason I didn't do it is because I didn't want y'all to have so many questions and wonder what happened. So, a year went by, 2 years went by, and we were right there on the edge, about to reach the 3-year mark because it would have been 3 years that July and he died in June. And I realized that he never was okay. And Gail had told me, you can never try to get your dad's happiness back. Your dad, true happiness is gone for your dad, but you can give him daily joys and make sure he's safe. So I feel like I failed on the safe part, but as his lady friend, and I talk about her a lot in the book, she was a godsend to us. His lady friend would tell me later, your dad he would have found a way. It wasn't my fault for leaving a firearm in the house. Daddy had his mind made up to go be with mama. And he also was losing his mobility. So his health, he had white matter disease. So his health was declining. And I feel like if his health wouldn't have been declining because that disease takes away your mobility and not your brain. He was told that very week of his death that his heart doctor said, Joe Bob, you've got the heart of a 17-year-old. And Nellene, his lady friend, said the look on his face was just disappointment and sadness. He wanted to have a heart attack. So I realized he knew that he was about to probably go to a nursing facility or some type of assisted living because it was getting hard for us to care for him because he could barely get out of bed. I knew that he knew, being a minister and witnessing to all these people all his life and going to nursing homes and visiting people and ministering to them, he knew what his life was about to be in a nursing home, trapped in his body with his mind still working, remembering those scenes of when my mom died. Nobody can live in that. And they say all the time, God won't give you more than you can handle, but that's not true. I'm a preacher's daughter. That's not biblical. God may give you more than you can handle, but it doesn't mean it's not still part of his plan.
Mm. I think we don't recognize the weight of the loss of the will to live when people are dealing with layer upon layer of trauma in every area of their being, right? Their heart, their mind, their body, and their spirit, that coalescing chaos that just dismantles the will to move forward is, I think, the beautiful part of what you spoke of about that daily commitment to healing. And not just, I mean, strength, yes, the deciding factor that says this grit, the sandpaper nature of it will not scratch me too much. I can push through this. I am tough, but also honoring the softer side where we need help, where we need support. And when things are coalescing like they did for your father, that intensity, it's a lot to navigate. We don't, as a culture, know how, and we don't offer culturally the support that families and individuals really need to feel safe enough to say, like, yes, this is terrifying and I don't want to experience this. It's an incredibly complex conversation. But I thank you for sharing all of that. I really wanted to make sure you honored that part of your dad's life and your story too.
Thank you for asking and letting me get that out. Daddy was a phenomenal individual. I've been married 3 times.
Mm,
It's not something I brag about. It's not something I ever dreamed would happen. But in each of those marriages, no man ever could measure up.
mm,
My dad was such a strong husband, father, and I do feel like with my dad that he hung on as long as he possibly could.
yeah.
And I feel like my divorce, there, losing his son-in-law that he also trusted and loved,
Mm.
I think it really crushed him.
Yeah.
I think that was very hard on my dad.
Yeah.
And I don't think he had the capacity to watch me hurt in another way.
Mm.
And I feel like my sister said it the morning of I like to call it the accident because it stems from my mom's accident. The morning of his accident, she said he gave us the last thing he felt like he could give us, which is to see his freedom.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
and I'm not condoning taking your life. I'm not, I don't want to come across that way, but it's a very different situation. Um, and it's something, I mean, my grief is not like yours. There's those words again.
Yeah.
My assistant and I make jokes all the time. She'll be talking about somebody and they've lost somebody, and then she'll look at me and she'll go, "You should write a book about that."
Thank you. You're hired. I love it. Okay. Speaking of writing a book, talk to me about this second book that's coming out that you've been working on.
It is called Hope All the Way. And
Mm.
it is about the signs that my mom, my dad, and God have sent me since my mom's passing to
Mm.
show me that I'm on the right path and that my purpose is found. Our purpose changes, but at the age of I'm 52 now, I know for a fact I was put on this earth to write this first book. There
Mm.
will be other books, but this first book and the way that it came to be is actually shocking.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to kind of walk people through that. And I've also got some research that I've been working on with a team out of Austin, researching the state of grief in America and what that really looks like. Because I feel like, and this is that school teacher in me coming out, I feel like we can't really move forward unless we see where we are, where we
Yes.
came from, so that we can then move forward more educated. Like, hey, 51% of Americans feel like there's a gag order on grief and they can't grieve openly, or I don't know what the statistics are going to come from the research. It's not going to be in until January, but I'm putting that in the second book. But it's a fun, hope-filled book. There's a
Mm.
lot of things in there that are going to come out. My own life, what's happened with me. I've opened my heart to love again, and I have found love again.
Mm.
And I'm going to talk about that and the new love in my life. So,
Mm.
that's a pretty amazing story right there. That's one of the biggest signs yet.
Yes, I love that. And you're absolutely right. I can't wait to see what the statistics are, what comes out of it, because when you said the state of grief in the nation, I'm like, dismal, misunderstood. Can we just play the name game? Brokenhearted, lost,
Unheard.
unheard, unseen. You're absolutely right, though. It's not just the school teacher in you. That's such a trauma-informed experience or expression to recognize. We don't have to go into the deepest depths and relive our traumas, but we do need to have awareness of what the thread is between all of our common decisions and pathways that we choose, because we're always going from a neurologically sound state, right? Our bodies learn a way to stay safe, and then they tread that path as long as possible. And often it's subconscious, and we don't understand why we're making the same decisions or why we're feeling the same kind of ways in different situations. And having an awareness and an ability to gain sight of that is where we really start to say, now I can get some insight. And that's why it's funny too, as a grief coach, I'm so insistent on your grief is not like my grief. Your grief is not like their grief. So their incredible transformation and process of healing would be lovely if they could monetize it and truly just copy paste it on top of your life. But that's not how grief works, unfortunately. But that's the state of our nation, right? It's more comfortable to copy paste a process. Now I'm getting on a soapbox, so I'm going to temper myself here. Um, and moving into a space where that discomfort, being okay, being uncomfortable is what really allows us to explore. Well, what does my grief look like? How will I punch back? How will I experience what strength is on this daily commitment to healing for myself? Because it's going to be super different from Theo's, and it's going to be different from Mandy's, and it's going to be different from everybody's. And I think that that permission that you're creating in this new book and with that research, by saying, hey, here's evidence for all of you cynics and all of you people who are afraid of grieving. Here's some evidence. Now you get to decide, what to do with it.
Yes, and here, grievers, look, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Guess what? There's all of these people are feeling the same way.
Yeah.
I'm just very excited to see what the findings are, excited to get that out, excited to go speak about it. And in my book, my first book that's out now, I say, by sharing we belong, and by belonging we can share. And,
Mm.
maybe once we get this research and we all feel this open, the Me Too movement, look how that happened.
Yeah.
And look how it just took one. And then all of a sudden, all these other people came set forth and said, it's me, I feel this way too. And now, I just feel like with grief in America, I honestly wanted to wear a black veil for a while so
Mm.
that people would just know I'm grieving and kind of just maybe put a pat of the hand on my back or a hug, but no words. Just no, I feel like I just wish that we could have a t-shirt made that says, I'm okay, I'm sad, I'm just grieving. I got labeled depressed, suicidal. And I'm like, if you start to hear that over and over, then you'll start to think that you are. But I was like, no, I'm not. I know myself pretty well. I know I'm not suicidal. I have a daughter. I have things to live for. I
Mhm.
have, this new book I'm writing. I know there's people that need it. I did not want to kill myself. I wanted to just be sad. Why can we not just be sad?
I wish we could answer that question for everyone listening because I think they are nodding in agreement. Yeah, why can't I just be sad? I will say I offer permission as much as I can, and I know you do too, that being sad is completely reasonable. Look at the state of everything. Sadness is a normal human response. It's an expected, reasonable response to the state of where we are living and what we're experiencing. And I wonder too if you could leave us with one piece of permission for someone who is hearing you and recognizing, oh my gosh, maybe it's okay that my grief doesn't make sense to anyone but me. And sometimes not even me. What would that one piece of permission be to help someone move into their own daily commitment to healing?
Well, it's going to be the number one thing is to talk to someone professional. And I know that you're thinking, no, I don't want to go talk to anybody about this. I promise you, if you can go and just sit and talk to somebody that is trained in your specific type of loss, grief, trauma, if you come away from that 1 hour session with just one thing, that is all I could come away with because I was in such a fog. I
Mhm.
was resentful, I was angry, I was sad, I was everything. But each time I would go see Gail, I would come away with one thing. And then after a period of time, you've got an arsenal of tools that can help you move forward.
Yeah.
So it's just getting your just that one step. Maybe it's a Zoom, maybe it's just over the phone. Talk to somebody that is trained professionally. And the reason I say that is you're going to get the unsolicited advice and maybe some not so good advice. And that's why I say in my book, I am just a high school English teacher and a farm girl, not a psychiatrist, psychologist, counselor, therapist, or a nurse or a doctor. I'm just telling you what I experienced from my perspective being a farm girl. But I can tell you that without Gail in my life, my counselor, I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you.
Mm.
I've got faith, I've got friends, I've got family and food, and I had a great foundation. But without nurturing that relationship, all those F words, without nurturing those with a counselor, it's almost impossible to move forward without some type of professional help. And it is critical to healing. And I promise it just that one thing that you come away with. And maybe you don't go for an hour. Start out with a 15-minute session. Find somebody that'll just let you be with them for 15 minutes. I just pray that everybody can get that help that they need.
Yeah. I love that, Theo. And if you're listening and you are one of the millions who live in a care desert where there's no one who knows what they're talking about, please reach out because not only am I available in a lot of ways, but there are resources and lots of networking that I can do on your behalf. And that's the whole point of this grief work, right? In an open internet based setting like this is to create some literacy and some conversation around loss so that we are more equipped, so that we do feel like I have at least one or two tools in my toolbox. And for now, that's enough. Theo, thank you so, so much. Oh my gosh, the richness of this conversation finally, after all these years, has been completely worth the wait. I'm so grateful. And tell us where we can find your book. Tell us where we can find you online to connect more and hear more about this research and the next book that's coming out too.
You can find this book, My Grief Is Not Like Yours, anywhere that books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. We've been doing a Texas book tour. We've been to a lot of Barnes and Nobles lately. But you can also go to my website and I'll sign it and mail it to you. And that website is thinktheo.com, ThinkTheo.com. And thank you so much for letting me have the opportunity to help. If there's just one person out there today that we reached, then that's what it was all about. And it was all in God's timing just to help that one person
That's
today.
the one. I agree. Theo, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you for listening to episode 165 of Restorative Grief. As we heard from Theo today, her journey through grief is as unique as the title of her book, My Grief Is Not Like Yours. She's shown us the power of embracing our individual experiences with loss and how healing starts when we honor those differences. You can connect with Theo and grab her book at local retailers to dive deeper into her powerful story. And if there's one thing you take with you from today, I hope it's that your grief doesn't have to fit anyone else's mold. Your healing is your own. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, I hope you know that you too deserve to be heard, seen, known, and loved through your losses, no matter how intense. So please reach out if you are in need of assistance finding trauma-informed grief support in your area, or if you'd like information on how to connect with me one-on-one. The links for Theo's book and other information about her work are in the show notes, so remember to check that out as well. We're so grateful you're here, and even more grateful that you're taking time to honor your own healing and story. And as always, before we go, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.